A warm welcome to everybody, to all our participants to this webinar on private sector contribution to public household survey programs. I'm Francesca Perucci, Assistant Director at the UN Statistics Division, and it's my great pleasure to moderate this panel today. First, allow me to thank our colleagues at the ECLAC Statistics Division for jointly organizing this event with us and the Intersecretarial Working Group on household surveys. Now, a few words about the group. The Intersecretarial Working Group was established by the Statistical Commission a few years ago to foster coordination on household survey activities. The overall objectives of the work include improving collaboration, advancing survey methodologies, and advocating and communicating the work done and the importance of household surveys. The group currently includes 11 international agencies and 10 member states. The agencies that are part of the group are responsible either for a survey program or for providing regular training and support for household surveys in areas that are under their respective mandate. Member states also recently joined to contribute to priority setting and to provide their technical expertise to the work of the group. So why are we here today? We've seen higher demand for better and more timely data, and this has been particularly evident during the pandemic, as we all know. At the same time, national statistical offices have faced these serious challenges due to various disruptions in statistical operations and had to quickly adapt. Surveys of national statistical offices by our division, the UN Statistics Division, and the World Bank during the pandemic showed that national statistical offices in many countries were able to make swift adaptation of their household survey tools and modes during the pandemic to meet the increased demand, data demand, while restrictions were limiting face-to-face data collection. But there are challenges. For example, among 800 surveys to measure the impact of COVID-19 on households, only around 40% used the frame from a recent national representative household survey. Many countries were using only face-to-face interviewing pre-pandemic and did not have the right infrastructure to switch to remote data collection. So today we have invited two important players in the survey field from the private sector, Gallup and Ipsos, to tell us how they have supported the collection of official statistics, either through national statistical offices or in partnership with an international organization. We will learn what type of survey infrastructure they can offer to help or complement what national statistical offices already have in place. For example, in acquiring or maintaining contact information for remote data collection, designing surveys and sampling methodologies, and data analysis. We will also have the opportunity to discuss how companies like Gallup and Ipsos can further support NSOs in producing data for policymaking. So we have three great speakers with us today, Andrew Zeppa and Ying Yan from Gallup and Sarah Geisen from Ipsos. But before I introduce them and give them the floor, our usual housekeeping rules. The webinar is being recorded. And the recording and the presentations will be made available on the Intersecretarial Working Group on Household Surveys website. Your microphone and camera have currently been disabled, but don't worry, they'll be activated during the Q&A session. Meanwhile, if you have questions and you don't want to forget them, please post them on the chat and they will be addressed right after the presentations and the roundtable. So let me now introduce our first speakers from Gallup, as I said. Andrew Zeppa is head of Gallup's public sector division in Europe and the Middle East, and the regional executive leadership team member. He also serves as Gallup executive director of United Nations partnerships. Ms. Han is a senior statistician at Gallup. She's the sampling and weighting lead for Gallup's World Poll. This is a 100-year project with a mission of conducting surveys on topics such as food access, employment, leadership performance, and well-being. She also participates in research projects with external organizations and works as a lead analyst for various client-facing projects. So Hi, Andrew and Ying. The floor is over to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Francesca, many thanks for the kind introduction. My colleague Ying is going to share some slides now. As Francesca mentioned, Andrew Zepper, partner at Gallup. I'm joined here by my colleague, Ying Han, who's a senior statistician. Ying, would you be able to put it in presentation mode, please?
It is in the presentation mode. Can you see it?
Next slide, please. Ying, we're unable to see the slides at all.
Sorry, let me start to reshare my screen.
I suppose it's not a Zoom meeting unless there's some technical problems at some point. Previous slide, please. Thank you. Gallup's work is informed by the work of this man, George Gallup, with his mission and vision. And so, although he's best known for his political polling, ultimately it was his work on well-being and understanding what makes societies great, which underpins all of the work and his legacy thereafter. Although there's an extra 3 billion people across the world, the sentiment remains largely the same. Ultimately, if we're going to improve people's lives, we need to measure them first. Next slide, please. Gallup's mechanism and mode of doing this is this global infrastructure called the Gallup World Poll. On an annual basis, since 2005, we've been undertaking nationally representative surveys in a minimum of about 140 countries. So each one of these countries is nationally representative in their own right, but collectively a representative of about 95% of the world's adult population. So that's individuals who are 15 years and plus. When our CEO decided to undertake this incredibly ambitious, bold undertaking, we made a 100-year commitment. We're 15 years into that process. And so every year we're getting that a little bit better, innovating a little bit further. But ultimately, it's essentially the only measurement framework of its sort. So every year we're undertaking translations in 150 different languages. We've implemented huge amounts of protocols in order to ensure the consistency, have collected over 2.5 million interviews to date, and have incredibly rigorous and robust sampling methodologies and techniques, which Ying will discuss later. Next slide. But just in order to actually provide a quick visual, this is our sampling frame from Nigeria. Across a number of organizations, they'll claim national representativity, but essentially skew things towards urban areas. As you can see here, it's incredibly representative across the entirety of the nation. Next slide. So although it's very easy for me to say face-to-face surveys in 104 to 108 countries every year, surveys in 140 plus countries across the world, ultimately, this is what these look like. Essentially, it's a conversation between two individuals, an interviewer with another individual. Next slide. And so whether that's face-to-face in all the low and middle income countries we interview or via telephone in high income countries, ultimately, it's consistently a conversation. And that's incredibly important in terms of comparability of the data. As you can see, the interviewers here actually using computer tablets for those interviews. And that's also incredibly important because it's enabled us to geocode every single interview, which is undertaken face-to-face since 2016. Ying will actually discuss the relevance of that further later. Because of the rigor and the robustness of the approach, essentially, we've got a number of key strategic partnerships with different UN entities. These strategic partnerships enable those entities on the front end to help develop those measurement frameworks in order to ensure that those organizations are meeting the mandates set out within their articles of incorporation. And then later on, in order so that they're adding accountability to the work that they do. I suppose most pertinently, the World Poll is used for measuring 3/4 Sustainable Development Goal indicators, everything spanning from forced labour all the way through to financial inclusion. As you can see from this quote from Sir Angus Deaton, the World Poll is very much regarded as almost a white label infrastructure for ensuring that global data gaps are plugged. Given the importance of evidence-based policymaking, the World Poll thereby provides that unique opportunity to ensure that there is data available for the world. And as such, it's heavily leveraged in a whole array of different reports that you'll be familiar with. Next slide, please. As mentioned, Gallup underpins 4 Sustainable Development Goal indicators, each of which have their own story around inception and how they were developed. For example, our work helping to support the validation of the Food Insecurity Experience Scale back in 2014 helped ensure that when 2015 came about, the Interagency Expert Working Group on the SDGs felt confident that it could be included within the ambit of the SDG framework. And there's very, very similar stories with regard to our work on measures of forced labour across the world, our work on financial inclusion, and most recently, our partnership with UNODC, ensuring that there's suitable global coverage around this indicator around, do you feel safe walking alone at night? Next slide. It's quite rare to actually see these key opportunities really manifest themselves. But over the course of these years, we've learned a few ingredients of things that really work. And so we've developed a few case studies. So for example, with the Voices of the Hungry project, essentially it was a reaction to trying to triangulate using a bottom-up approach to measure food insecurity. Because of the robust validation that we were able to achieve and the collection of that data, it was then incorporated within as SDG 2.1.2. The broad policy impact of the validation of this indicator has been pretty significant, and now it's incorporated within the IPC classifications for understanding chronic food insecurity within the UN system. And because it's been translated into over 140 languages in a consistent fashion, we've helped remove some of those barriers around adoption. And over 100 countries' national statistics offices have now included it within their own national data collection surveys. We saw a couple of key principles in terms of the mainstreaming of this. Try and build upon strong foundations. As an organization, although we love an intellectual challenge, we try not to be arrogant and trying to ensure that we're taking the best of what's already available and enhancing and building further upon that. Historically, there was never any understanding around gender inequalities on food insecurity across the world. Because the World Poll actually asks individuals on an individual basis, we've therefore been able to actually have global accountability around the gender gap on food insecurity. And then finally, we continually try and push forward best practices in terms of continuous improvement and have recently adopted the harmonized degree of urbanization variable, which means that when organizations are talking about urbanicity, they can be confident that when they talk about urban, peri-urban and rural, it's consistent regardless of whether it's a vast country like India or China or a smaller country. Next slide. For me, one of the key critical standout moments for us was that this meeting on the 28th of October in 2015, when we essentially got that final approval from the Interagency Expert Working Group, which showed how critical the private sector was in helping to mainstream and normalize this food insecurity experience scale. Ultimately, by the fact that the system could point to highly robust data for 140 countries, essentially it helped with that, addressing that adoption curve around the measures and frameworks in place. I'll hand you over to my colleague Ying, who'll talk a little bit more around how we do our work and to ensure that it's world-class and robust.
Thanks, Andrew. Hey everyone, I don't know how you feel about Andrew's presentation. As for me, even though I have been working for Gallup for almost 5 years, I'm still impressed by those numbers and the coverage rate of our World Poll survey. So I would like to start my presentation with this map. So this map illustrates the countries covered in Gallup World Poll, and with data collected either through phone interview or face-to-face interviews. And here comes a photo of an interviewer conducting interviews during fieldwork. And this is just one photo. And we've done this at least a million of times. And that is not an exaggeration. And actually, starting from 2016, Gallup has started geotagging all the face-to-face interview locations. And here on the map, all those green dots are face-to-face interview locations for years 2017, 18, and 19. So we can comfortably say that we can confidently say Gallup is the world's broadest geotag global survey. So with the GPS information available, our clients, our data users can actually enrich WordPol data with external, like with auxiliary information, like satellite information, traffic information, and climate information to broaden, to widen their analysis range. So you might be wondering how we made it. So how can we make how we made WordPol so successful? I will say that is mainly because we are using a well-constructed integrative framework. So this framework, it has 5 pillars, and I will introduce them to you one by one. And the first one is standardizing method across regions. And we know most of our data users, they want to compare the results across regions, across countries, and across years. So it is very important for us to standardize our methods across regions, countries, and years. So I would like to use a method. I would like to illustrate this with the household selection methods we used for face-to-face interviews. So at Gallup, we use a method called random route method for selecting households during fieldwork. So in our regional trainings, in our operation manuals, we describe in great detail how this method works. We teach the supervisors, with the interviewers, how to select the starting point structure in the fieldwork and how to select the household using a right-hand rule and a phased interval. And if needed, how can they select a replacement household? So all this are to make sure all our local vendors across the world, they will use the same method for selecting the household, and we will make sure they can implement this method during fieldwork correctly. And the second pillar is about centralizing the process. So in order to have a better control of the data collection and data processing, we try to centralize our processes as much as we can. So here, this is a table and it listed all the centralized process before, during, and after fieldwork. Before fieldwork, we have questionnaire design, we have translation, programming, scripting, testing, and sampling. And we have partial data quality checking during fieldwork, and we have full data set checking, quality checking, data cleaning, weighting, and vetting after fieldwork. So the better we centralize those processes, the more control that we can have on our data collection and data processing. The third pillar is about building a global network of research agencies. I would say WordPol cannot happen if we don't have we don't have the support of our research agencies, local research agencies. Through the years, Gallup has developed a system of evaluating potential research agencies, onboarding new agencies, and training field teams. And we have annual conference to help our research agencies to build their technical capacity. And sometimes we even offer initiatives to improve their engagement. And this slide just kind of gives you some ideas about how we identify the potential agencies and the major steps of evaluating a potential agency. I will say it started with initial profile evaluation, followed by in-depth interview, usually with a site visit, and then followed by an IT review. And this is not the end of the evaluation, and we carry on the evaluation through our collaboration with an agent, and we want to make sure that we can trust them for data collection, just like our client can trust us. And the fourth one is about preparing detailed documentation. So we try to document sufficient descriptive information of any major steps of our data collection and processing process phase. So survey operation manuals, country-level sampling plans, and the translation notes are just some of these examples. So we think it is important to do so because it will help us to better communicate with our client, our local vendors, supervisors, and interviewers, and our colleagues within Gallup. And it is also can be very important for us in the future, for the future when we want to trace back what we did in the past. So this slide just it shows you what we usually include in a country-level sampling plan. It includes, but not limited to, geographic exclusions, the source that we used for constructing the sampling frame, the stratification and allocation method, the definitions of PSU, SSU, and the corresponding selection method. And we also include a detailed instruction on how to select a PSU replacement if we have to replace a PSU during field work due to any security issues. And there's more than the list. And the last one is about embracing technology. When Whirlpool just started, all the face-to-face interviews are done with pen and paper. So later, and Gallup started to use a computer-assisted person interview software called Survey2Go, and it has some very nice features. And later, we also developed an e-learning platform, and which make it easy for field staff training. And this slide shows what Survey2Go can do. And you can capture GPS of the interview, and you can record the interviews. And it also provides some summary statistics about interviews at the survey level and at the interviewer level. With all this information in hand, it can be very useful. It can be very useful for quality checking. For example, you can use a capture GPS to check whether the interview was conducted at the right spot. And to summarize, the integrative framework is what makes Gallup Whirlpool successful so far, and it is what ensured the high quality of our data. And we will continue to use this framework, and we will improve it as time goes. And at the end, we would like to also share with you some ongoing improvement and research Gallup has been working on. The first one is about small area estimation. So nowadays, people are not satisfied with national level estimates. They want to know what will happen to the region that they live. So they are interested in subpopulation estimates. But the issue is, with a national survey, you might have a very few or no observations for some of the subpopulations. So small area estimation can be the solution. And at Gallup, we use a small area estimation model that take into account individual level information and area level informations. And this has been used by Gallup for several projects conducted in US and Japan. Network sampling is another method that Gallup used to produce country-level estimates of forced labor and forced marriage. Graded population sampling is a relatively new sampling method that Gallup used for Whirlpool. This method was emerged with the last decades, and it is a good alternative to traditional sampling method, which heavily depends on census. And basically, what you will do is divide the country into grades. And for each grade, you will have a population estimates. Then you can use the grade as your sampling unit, and you can use the population estimate as a matter of size for PPI selection. And we have used this method in different sampling stages, and we have used this method in both developed and developing countries. On the right of this slides, you will see two new methods that Gallup has been researching on. We hasn't really put it into use for work poll yet, because we want to better understand how these two new methods will affect the data. So we want to understand that first, because high quality data is very important for us. So the first method is about data collection mode change. So usually people are thinking of switching fully from face-to-face to telephone, or switching fully from telephone to web. But here we are thinking of combining two data collection modes into one. So for example, for the telephone to web mode, basically what we'll do, we'll start with a telephone RTD sample, and the interviewers will call these numbers and checking whether the respondent is eligible for this study and whether they would like to participate for the survey. If so, then we will send them a link to the full survey, and they will complete the full survey through that link rather than through phone. So this is a really appealing option, because it can greatly reduce your cost by shortening the time you spend over the phone, and at the same time you can still have a very good control over the sample selection, having all the nice probabilities of have all the nice properties of a probability-based sample. And the Gallup have an experiment in 4 different countries in year 2022. And the last one is about non-probability sampling. And we all know this is a quite trendy method of data collection because it is fast and easy cheap. But however, most of us know that it has some potential presence of, it has some issues, potential presence of coverage errors, because the self-selection nature of the non-probability samples. And the non-probability sample should be used with actual caution. So back to 2021, Gallup conducted a study in different countries across the world in order to evaluate the feasibility of switching to non-probability panels. So we might have a very good understanding of the web panels in US, but things can be different in different countries, in middle and the high-income countries, in developed countries and the developing countries. Things can be quite different. And at the same time, we are also testing different weighting methods, trying to figure out which weighting methods can help us reduce the bias caused by the potential coverage error issues. And with that, so that's all we want to share with this presentation. If you have any questions, we don't have a lot of time to go to the details, but if you have any questions related to Gallup work, please reach out to Andrew or me, and here's our contact information. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian and Andrew, for sharing your impressive work. We'll have an opportunity to revisit and expand on what you presented during the roundtable, and also I'm sure participants will have lots of questions for you in the Q&A part. Let me now turn to Sarah Geisen. She's a senior director in the Ipsos Public Affairs team and is responsible for the quality and successful completion of the research projects delivered by the team. She's project coordinator of the Workers' Exposure Survey on Cancer Risk Factors in Europe for the European Union Information Agency for Occupational Safety and Health, and was involved in several multi-country studies. So it's my great pleasure to give you the floor, Sarah. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this works as I like it to work. I'm not sure. So do you see my screen, the PowerPoint?
We can see your screen,
but it's not in
mode.
Yeah,
not in presentation mode.
Try.
If you can try to click on the. Perfect. Thank you.
Not fully there yet. Give me a second.
It's now in presentation mode, Sarah.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, but okay, I'm almost there. Okay, it's still in presentation mode?
Yes, it is.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Wonderful.
Sorry for
Over to you.
Many thanks. So yeah, good morning or good afternoon in my case, and to some maybe good evening. I'm very happy. So yeah, as Francesca already introduced me, I'm Sarah Gijzen, work for Ipsos, and I'm very happy with this opportunity to talk here about Ipsos expertise and capacity for public surveys and social research. So Ipsos, I'm going to. Ipsos is a market research agency founded in the 70s in France. By now, it has become a global research company. We're present in 90 countries. We have more than 18,000 people working at Ipsos. And the biggest service line in Ipsos is actually what we call public affairs. So we have more than 900 researchers working in the public affairs division of Ipsos. We have teams in public affairs teams in 44 countries across the world. So we've really grown, especially in the past years. And within public affairs, we address, of course, a wide area of research needs from our clients. And our clients are typically governments, that can be local governments, national or supranational governments, such as the EU, international organizations such as UN, but also World Bank, NATO, the larger NGOs, universities, research centers. So also our client portfolio is fairly diverse. We conduct research in public affairs mainly to understand citizens in their perceptions, their opinions, their expectations, and their behavior. And in the past years, we actually observed a growing interest among our clients in behavioral insights, in rapid assessments, in the use of composite indicators, in evidence-informed or evidence-based policymaking, foresight, microeconomic evaluations, modeling, and public consultations, and so on. So we see also there evolutions happening. Besides the research or the custom research that we organize for our clients, we also have our own global studies. This we do because also ourselves want to measure current topics, the hot topics of the day. We want to follow up on trends, and we publish the results of these studies. So they are publicly available. We also use them to contextualize or to cross-validate research or results from research in our other studies. Now, for our international social research, we have the following organization in place. As you can see, we have 3 main hubs, one in Europe, one in the US, and one in India. And these hubs for international social research, they specialize in multi-country research, and they service clients in their region. But we also set up research, each of the hubs in our own regions for global clients. Now, the hubs also work closely together when one hub coordinates research in the region of the other hub, so that we can really tap into the really necessary local knowledge of the regions or the countries in scope. Beside the 3 main hubs, we have specialized international social research teams sitting also in other countries, and they support us as well. So we have a team in Jordan that help us when we conduct research in the MENA. We have also a team a bit spread across different countries in sub-Saharan Africa. They also are there for us to organize the work there, to help us with everything that is needed. And we have teams that specialize in topics or specialize in hard-to-reach groups, especially our international social research team in the UK is very supportive in these areas. The hubs, so the main hubs, are also supported by a research method center. Actually, we have several. These are teams of really invaluable methods experts. They offer us the best-in-class methodological solutions, and they support us on a number of aspects, mainly sampling and weighting, advanced data analytics, but also in questionnaire design and experimental design. Equally important is our quality assurance system. It's a very comprehensive system that ensures safety, reliability, and best quality, and goes together with risk management, which is really key in each of the studies that we do, and transparency to our clients. It's really important to have that there from the start, to be able to talk if things go wrong, but also to discuss the best and the right solutions in case of problems. So the quality assurance system that we have in place for our survey-based system reconcile or integrate actually process and user-oriented quality frameworks, such as, of course, known the total survey error framework, but also the European Statistical System framework is part of that. Important to mention is that it's comprehensive, so ethics, safety is really key, not only guaranteeing safety for participants in research, but also for interviewers, and data protection, especially in Europe since the implementation of GDPR in 2018. This has become very strict, is of essential importance. So also there, this is key. We have specialized teams and experts that support us in terms of data protection. And then, of course, we could not do multi-country research if we would not have an operations center. So that is a team of our Center of Excellence, which has as their mission to provide access to all citizens in all parts of the world. So they cover two main methods or data collection methods. The one is online or mobile data collection. And under that, they also do the management of the online panels that we have at Ipsos. And of course, this team or this operations team also cover the offline methods, face-to-face and telephone interviewing. Both we still do a lot. On the next slide, so the one here, you see a snapshot of the online and mobile data collection capacity and the panels that we have at our disposal at Ipsos. So you can see that we have 50 owned panels, but also rely on a network of panels from partners. And together they cover more than 100 countries and several hundreds of millions of online citizens. So that's a very rich capacity that we have for online research. Key here also is our device agnostic scripting capacities. So all the questionnaires for our online research, they are scripted in a device agnostic way. So you can take the survey on whatever mobile device that you want. And this is really key, especially for the younger age segments in the population that tend to complete surveys only if they can do it on their mobile device. So they need to be absolutely clear and perfectly fit for mobile devices too. And for offline methods, we rely, of course, on the field teams that we have in Ipsos offices, but we don't have them in all the offices. So we also rely here on a network of external trusted partners. And I will now dive a bit deeper on the hub in Europe, the Public Affairs hub in Europe, where I am based. I'm part of that team. The hub is based in Leuven, close to Brussels, close to where the European institutions are sitting. And these are also our main clients, but not exclusively. We also work for clients like World Bank, like UN Women, like the NATO. So we also have some of the global clients, international organizations. So the hub in Europe, you can see, is structured around, we call it practices. So we have a team that is focusing on behavioral studies and on communication research. There is another team that specializes in public opinion polling and consumer and B2B research, but then from a policy perspective. And lastly, a team that is really dedicated to the very large scale or longitudinal high standard data collection projects. Also part of the hub is there is a research method center. We also have quality managers, and we have a dedicated, we call it a delivery team. There's actually, behind the scene operations team that support us with all the operations that we need for our studies. And I will showcase briefly, time is too short to really go in great detail, but I want to show 4 different survey projects that are conducted by this hub to illustrate the various type of surveys that we do, and also to illustrate what is essential and challenging in each of these studies. And the first one I want to showcase is the study or the survey that we did for UN Women last year in 2021 on the impact of COVID-19 on violence against women. This was a survey we conducted via telephone, so remote data collection, and we interviewed women in 13 countries spanning all regions in the world. So we had the survey going on in countries like Bangladesh, in Cameroon, in Colombia, and 10 more. Now, critical here, because of the topic and because we really wanted to measure women's experience with violence against women. So it was critical to ensure an effective or to have in place an effective safety protocol, because we needed to ensure during the interview at all times that the interviewed woman was in a safe place, could not be overheard, did only need to give neutral answers like numbers or yes or no, so that at no time she was put in danger. And for that, we really had an extensive training of the interviewer team in all the countries. In this case, they were all female. So they were extensively trained in this safety protocol. And we worked closely with the UN Women team, but also with people with experience from other organizations to put this in place. Now, to measure these sensitive topics and to mitigate bias when asking respondents about their experience with, for example, violence against women, we used projective techniques such as vignettes, but also list randomization formats. That was fairly new. So we really tested it in the first phase, so with a small group of countries in the first phase of the survey, and optimized it in the second phase. We've done further research on it together with UN Women, and the results are really satisfying. So we are happy that this type of format worked well to measure experience with violence against women. Also important here, we were surveying the countries in very different regions of the world. Also, the countries themselves were very different compared to each other. So it's still to ensure comparability of results. And that was a really challenging aspect for us. So, for example, we used in all the countries random digital generated numbers, mobile numbers as a sampling frame. But in Thailand, for example, this proved to be very challenging because they just had this major awareness campaign organized by the government about scams that could happen to them, or they could be trapped when they were called over the phone by unknown numbers. And so this is what exactly happened in the survey. So we really had to train the interviewers also in how to explain in a brief but clear manner, and to gain the trust from respondents that they called. Now, comparability, and in that way, comparable also to what Gallup just presented for their world poll. So comparability, we ensured, or we try to ensure via a very centralized approach. So we also used a single data platform in all the countries, and the teams were not all used to that. So they were used to use their own local system, their own local script. But in this case, they really had to use the script that we generated for them. Now, operationally, this was not a problem, but it was a matter of them to get used to that. But for us, it was really beneficial because we had all the data coming in a database that we monitored, that we had access to at all times, so we could monitor the field as it was going on continuously and see how things went, but also run data checks, so quality control at all times. Representativity, another of the samples, another challenging aspect here. So the idea was to obtain representative samples of female adults in terms of region and age group. And we did that through the use of RDD mobile sample frames. We ensured that we had, including in the gross samples, telephone numbers with according to the number formats from all active mobile operators in each country. And we implemented a strict contact protocol that stipulated a certain minimum of call attempts that the local teams had to do, spread over different times of the day and days in the week. And the sample composition was closely monitored, and we also adjusted in some cases, in some countries, the contact protocol if we saw that there were skews. For example, challenge was that was to obtain sufficient interviews with older women. And so in some countries, they said, well, yes, maybe we should increase the morning attempts because older women tend to take a nap in the afternoon and are less reachable. So we also adjusted the contact protocol along the way. Another challenge related to that was to obtain national reliable national statistics, because we needed them for the 18+ female population, but also split per age group and per region. That was not always easy to get them, but through the support of UN Women, and we could liaise directly with the national statistical offices, and we were able to get them. Another survey program, so on the bottom of the slide, is the consumer expectation survey panel that we run for the European Central Bank since 2020. It's a longitudinal study, and it organizes on a monthly basis a survey to measure expectations and behavior of the public in Europe on economic and financial topics. And for this survey program, we have built panels of consumers in 11 EU countries. To ensure, again, representativity, which is key, a major part of the panels, especially in the 4 larger countries in Europe, were recruited via random probability sampling approach, and that was here done via telephone recruitment. The other part for the panels, we recruited online via existing online panels. And then the key challenge here was then, of course, to blend both frames from which we recruited into one approach for the weighting that we apply for the monthly sample of completed interviews. So that was really on methodological level, a key challenge that we had to overcome, and for which we have a system in place now. Here, and also thanks to of course the funding of the European Central Bank, we have a specific but also generous incentive system in place to increase panel loyalty, but also to attract younger age groups and lower educated age groups, because we measure here their perceptions and their behavior on financial and economic topics. So you can imagine that the nature of the questions are perceived as more difficult. And that is why it's really difficult to recruit and keep these younger segments of the population, the lower educated, in the panel. So that remains a challenge in this survey program. And then a third type of surveys that I want to present are what we call behavioral experiment studies. And we typically run them online via online access panels. And this type of surveys are really trending at the European institutions to provide them with better insights in what drives behavior of citizens and consumers, what are their unconscious preferences, how do consumers understand new versions of energy or nutrition labels that the Commission is implementing. And so this is, over the past years, it's really booming, this type of behavioral experiment surveys. So they cover a wide range of topics. Typically, we run them with higher sample sizes in a selection of well-chosen countries so that we can extrapolate the results to the EU level. And essential for this type of survey is that they really need an academic experimental design, which very specifically prescribes the allocation of respondents to conditions or treatments and control groups in the experiment. And this needs to be built in the survey script. So it requires a much more complex scripting than the more common regular surveys that we run. And in some cases, they also require the design of full mock-up environments to mimic real-life situations for the participants in the experiments. So it can be a store where products are shown on the shelf. It can also be online social media platforms where we want to see how certain elements or manipulations in that environment affect certain decisions or purchase decisions that consumers take. So also there, that was a challenge and a push for our scripters and designers, but also for the platforms to put this type of mock-ups and complex scripting in place. And then another push we had to implement was the allocation and handling of incentives, not just incentives because they participate, but incentives really based on the choices and the performance of the participants in the experiments. So that's also a challenge also for our panel managers to put that into place. And then lastly, I want to present quickly the Flash Eurobarometer survey program because this is the polling instrument for the EU institutions and agencies. They use it to monitor on a regular basis public opinion and attitudes on several aspects or topics of political or social nature. And this Eurobarometer data is accessible to the public, not just the raw data, also results, all the reports is publicly available. Now we run at Ipsos what they call the Flash Eurobarometer, and as the name Flash may reveal or tell, it is a survey that needs to be delivered very quickly for the clients there. So we need to deliver the results in a very short time span, of course, without compromising on quality. And it covers both online and telephone data collection methods. So for this program, we really had to set up and invest in a process and operational system to guarantee maximal efficiency and speed in all phases. So we work there with in a highly standardized way with fixed templates, with specifically trained people in fixed roles. So that allows us to do these things, these surveys quickly, but at the same time, it's not flexible. So it's very specific template. Also, the report, they look very similar. They follow a very fixed template. But in that way, yeah, we are able to deliver the result within the time expectations from the clients there. Now, we have built tons of expertise in designing and executions of surveys among the general public or specific groups of the national populations. And we, of course, continue to improve our survey methods based on research insights. But this does not mean that we don't face challenges. I've foregrounded some of the ones that we had. But it also don't mean that we don't look into other solutions. And I want to end my presentations today with showing some of the solutions that we are further developing at Ipsos. And one is what we call leading edge analytics. And the other is a kind of answer to what we see in when we are contacting citizens to poll their opinion, to look into their behavior. Because we see that representativity and sample composition is a key challenge. But let me first go into the analytics parts. So I will present two examples, and both examples deal with the integration of multi-source data, and at the same time to do that in a very rapid way. So also they deal with the request of rapid delivery of results and insights, even in real time. And the first one I want to showcase is what we did for the World Bank after the major explosion in Beirut in 2020. So we conducted this damage and needs assessment within a time span of 9 days. So what we did was a combination or fusion of drone and satellite imagery We also used human mobility data. We included NGO assessments. We analyzed and integrated social media posts. We, through that, also integrated thousands of live photos and videos. We included access to, or the municipal data that we could have access to, and we conducted interviews with local people in the impacted area. And by combining all these insights, all these analyses, we were able to build a comprehensive picture of the situation on the ground. And it allowed us also to estimate the cost of the damages, and you can see the number there, and to provide insights into the needs in the area of housing that was needed, healthcare, education, security, governance, water and sanitation, and other areas. And then the other example is what we did in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we called it our Biosurveillance Atlas platform. And this was developed specifically for monitoring the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was specifically designed for local decision makers. So what we did was the integration of data through 6 different and disparate streams, data streams, as you can call them, and we combined them into this platform so that they could together provide a unified picture of public reaction to COVID-19 and also how this evolved over time. I'm not going into the detail of all these 6 data streams, but one of these was social intelligence. So we had this real-time stream from multiple social media channels to provide insights into local adaptation to disease, insights into the public perception of how effective the government was in taking measures and handling the pandemic, but also into digital disinformation campaigns that were going and were launched on social media channels. We also looked into website traffic to look into, for instance, what agencies people were looking up to get information on COVID-19, what advice specifically they were looking for. And then another example of data streams that we monitored and integrated was anonymized financial transactions. This came from anonymized geo-aggregated credit card transactions, and it allowed us to look into purchasing patterns associated with COVID-19 response, but also patterns associated with disease fleeing behavior. So this was a very rich platform that we had in place and which was used by decision makers on various levels. And then lastly, I want to present our response, or not a new initiatives, but an initiative that we are now rolling out in Europe in response to challenging in representativity of sample compositions, especially when we run online studies. So this is what we call our Ipsos Knowledge Panel. We are rolling it out now in Europe to offer a premium and reliable source of nationally representative data. So it's kind of alternative to face-to-face and telephone-based methods. And especially with this, for example, what I presented earlier, these behavioral experiments, which typically need to be done online. So here also Knowledge Panel can be an answer to that, to also make sure we have really representative samples where we can run the studies online. So unlike the more traditional online panels, the panelists for Knowledge Panel are recruited using random probability sampling. This means that every individual in the country has a chance to get selected, and we know about their probability to get selected. And also important here is that we also recruit people who are not necessarily online. So we also recruit offliners, and we provide them with a tablet and an email address for the sake of being able to complete surveys in the context of knowledge panels, of course. So also important for knowledge panel is that we don't overburden the panelists with a lot of surveys. So it's really selective what surveys and the frequency of surveys that we launch on knowledge panel. So to be able to ensure high completion and high response rates. So we don't want to overburden them, but also we have a generous or valued incentive system in place for them. And also key here is being able to deliver the results fast. Because we run it online, we have the panels in place, so fieldwork typically takes place in 1 week's time, and data is returned within a week of fieldwork ending. So it's not new. We started field knowledge panel, in the US in the 90s. It is there the oldest and largest probability-based online panel. It has about 60,000 panel members. It's very well known in the US. And in Europe, we have also launched it now. It's fully operational in the UK. We are also taking the first surveys on knowledge panel in 4 countries. That is France, Italy, Poland, and Sweden. And in the other countries, the knowledge panel is in different stages of development, but not fully operational. And this brings me to the end of my talk. Hope that you get that it has provided you with a bit of a good picture of the various things in terms of surveys that we do at Ipsos. And I'm happy, of course, to take your questions in the Q&A session. And I think I have also included my email address and also that of our Managing Director, Christine Trezeny. So also questions via email are very welcome. Thank you. And I give the floor back to Francesca.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I'm sure I see already some questions for you and for the other presenters. But before I turn to the questions from the audience, I'd like to pose a couple of questions to you, to all 3 of you, and have a quick round of discussion. First, I'd like to ask all 3 presenters how you collaborate with subject matter experts. Like the example, Sarah, you gave of working on violence against women and other areas where you really need to sort of comply with methodologies and definitions that have been agreed at the global level, with a lot of the work done, globally to set the standards, etc. So I'd like to hear from all 3 of you how you establish that collaboration with the subject matter specialists and how you ensure, that you, I noticed that you're very well on top of all those different topics and subject matters, but how you do it in practice. Perhaps we go back to Andrew from the start. Quick answers so that we have time to also take a few questions from the audience. Over to you, Andrew.
Excellent. So in 3 key ways. The first is we've got a battery of senior scientists. And so essentially world-leading global experts who we can rely upon in order just to sense check the work that we're doing. Individuals including Nobel laureates, Sir Angus Deaton, Danny Kahneman, plus a whole host of others. So that's first of all. And then obviously on a individual project basis, it's necessary to have the leading foremost experts on that specific topic. And so we're big believers in technical advisory groups. So if you look across the board of all of our SDG monitoring work, generally there's always been a technical advisory group within kind of the inception phase of that work, which ensures that we're leaning into the best in class methodologies, researches, and approaches. And then finally, just through our network, obviously the fact that we work with a huge number of those subject matter experts already means that we've got pretty strong Rolodex in that regard. And then also just through our networks, through attendance at conferences, whether WAPE or APE, and also the International Association of Official Statistics.
Thank you, Andrew. Over to you, Ying.
Hi, so I think I didn't have a lot of experience working with such experts, but I was on one project which is about building global index for women's health for Hologic. And for that is a kind of have a quite a like subject matters, and we did bring experts that related to maybe violence toward women onto the project to decide whether it is proper to include that question into the index creation. So that is my only experience working with them, but I believe the similar approaches has been done for many projects did in Gallup. Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you. Sarah, over to you.
Yeah, no new answers. Of course, similar also to the way Gallup organizes it. Yeah, we do have in-house. I mean, Ipsos is this global company with, as I explained, more than 18,000 people. So we do have experts, not just methods experts, but also really topic policy or topic experts, experts specialized in certain policy areas. So no matter where they are sitting, no matter in which part of the world, we really, and that's really strongly encouraged within Ipsos to collaborate, to establish the collaborations on projects, no matter where they are sitting. But not just that, also as part of most of the projects that we do for our clients, if we feel there is a need for expertise that we don't have in-house, we team up. We team up with external partners. We have our typical partners for certain topics or certain types of projects with whom we team up. But if we don't have them at hand, we look for them. So it is actually when we answer to tenders and prepare our proposals, part of it is preparing the proposals, but an essential part is also looking for the right people to form the best team that for the study that we are proposing. So we also work a lot with advisory groups composed of external advisors. We build it also in the project management for the studies. So we build in phases to consult external experts or subject matter experts to also do something, so to have the time to deal with their advice and their feedback. So this is built in as a key element in our project management. So this way we really ensure that the required expertise is integrated in the studies that we conduct.
Wonderful, thank you, Sarah. I'd like now to move to a slightly different topic and focus a little bit more on how you see your role in helping national statistical offices. What can you really offer, what you're offering already in terms of support and training, and how you see your role in a sense, complementary to their work on household surveys. And I'll follow the same order. Andrew, you get the first turn. Over to you.
Thank you for giving me the first bite of the cherry. So ultimately, we try to view ourselves very much as an additional limb to those government agencies themselves. Ultimately, where they don't have the capabilities or capacity, we very much view ourselves as an addition to them. And so work in a very collaborative fashion in that regard. And ultimately, it all comes down to the requirements and the needs of that individual entity. So we work on either on national level studies, whether on a subnational level for on a state-by-state basis, and then finally also on a combination of those. For example, our partnership with DG Regio is NUTS1 and NUTS2 surveys across the EU 28, which is obviously subnationally representative, nationally representative, and pan-European representative. And so ultimately that level of analysis is very much driven by which entity it is. And then with regard to the actual work streams, it's everything from benchmarking national competitiveness, development of KPI measures and new innovative methods for, I suppose, delivering upon their respective mandates, depending on which agency it is, all the way through to census support. So essentially a turnkey solution, regardless of whatever entity or unit of measurement is required.
Thank you. Ying, over to you.
I would say, through so many years working on national surveys, we do have a lot of experience in data collection, data processing to share with the national statistical offices if needed, if they would like to collaborate with us, if they would like to hire us for any, national studies in their country, we can help. And, we work with their local wonders, so they don't really need to worry about, maybe I think maybe they can even store their data within their country. So I don't think that might be a big issue. But I think if any of the National Statistic Office are interested, we definitely can share our experience with any of the data collection steps with them, as long as if I don't break Gallup rule.
Thank you. Sarah, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it is the collaboration goes or the benefits of the collaboration go in two directions. We really benefit in working or collaborating with local statistical office from their local knowledge or the statistics that they can provide to us, and vice versa. Because of our experience in multi-country research, they typically, or we help them with harmonizing the way surveys or data collections are implemented, or the way indices are being built. So one of the survey programs we participate in is the Business and Consumer Survey Program for DG ECFIN of the European Commission. It is a very decentralized approach where a lot of also national statistical office has a role, also national central banks have a role there. And our role is to help through DG ECFIN and also we take part in workshops to look into, okay, how can we harmonize this better to ensure, again, comparability of results and indices. So in that sense, yeah, we definitely see it as a collaboration that should be beneficial and valuable in both directions.
Thank you, Sarah. Let me now take a couple of questions from our audience. I see there is a question for Andrew and Ying. You probably have seen that already regarding the small area estimation models, where they can see results, and if there are technical notes that they can access and that they can use. So I don't know who wants to take that. Ying, I see you nodding. Perhaps you can tackle that.
Yeah, I can answer that question. So first, thanks for the questions. So at least as far as I know, at least for the project about Japan, we have not released any small area estimation results yet. We are still thinking about what would be the best approach, like the best method to kind of demonstrate that data maybe to the audience. Because it can be quite sensitive when you compare results for prefectures in Japan. And I'm not quite sure about the US results though, since I was not involved much in that one. But the small area estimation method that we used is called multi-level regression with post-stratification, or you can just call it Mr. P. And if any of you is interested in that method, you can refer to Andrew Gelman's paper or book, and he is a professor at Columbia University.
And I can confirm with regard to the US, there's a specific project website for it, and all of the notes are there.
Yeah, perhaps you can put those contacts in the chat for people to see. That'd be terribly helpful. Thank you both. And Sarah, you have a question, a similar question in the sense, accessing further information and technical notes. In particular, for you was on the methodology of the telephone survey about violence against women in the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, I see that. So. UN Women is also preparing a methodological note because also for them this was in terms of rapid gender assessment via remote data collection was also kind of new to them, especially on this scale, evolving 13 countries. So they are preparing this. It's not yet published. So what is published is, of course, the report with insights and results. But I'm happy to share. We have already developed a kind of document. There is a very extensive technical report, but I'm not going to burden you with that. That's several hundred pages. But we also have kind of more summary note, which I can share. So I'm happy to do that. We are also working, as we speak now, on a paper where we really looked further into this list randomization or randomized question formats with results. So that will be published. I can't tell exactly when, but I can also keep you up to date about that. So, but the memo summarizing the key elements in the methodology, I'm happy to share via email. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you. Let me now turn to our colleagues who would like to intervene. Aside from the chat, I think their microphones have been unlocked so they can speak. I think, see, Jakob, Said, you have your hand up. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Franziska. Quickly, maybe I'm putting this question in the context of developing countries. So, one, what is the approach that, in particular, Gallup is taking in creating collaborations and trust in terms of, collecting data at the national level? And then I think there are some challenges of considering the data that's collected through through Gallup or from private sector to be considered as unofficial data. So in that type of thing, how do you really encounter that challenge, and how do you resolve that type of problem that's happening? I think this is a real problem, a practical problem that you guys are facing on the daily basis, in my opinion. And the third question might be related to the sampling frame. I assume that we are using the existing sampling frame that has been generated through the censuses of these countries. So in developing countries context, some of these frames are really outdated. Okay? Therefore, it really requires a timely update and so forth. In that context, how do you really use this outdated sampling frame to draw samples and have reliable data collection practically? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jakob. Great questions. I'll go in order. So two-part questions, but you can address both at the same time. Andrew, over to you.
Jakob, great questions. So I'll allow Ying to tackle the element around sampling frames, as that's her day-to-day bread and butter. But with regard to that whole approach around how do we build trust with national statistics offices? So you can't force trust upon any organization. All you can do is be worthy of being trusted. And so the mechanism with which we use that is transparency. So transparency over our methods, transparency over our approach, transparency over our results, if a government agency wants that. And also just ensuring that we're absolutely watertight in terms of all of the approaches with regard to the permissions and consents obtained where necessary. And so ultimately, it's that process where, by ensuring that we're using rigorous methodologies with full levels of transparency over that, we can actually ensure that we're being worthy of trust. Ying, perhaps you'd like to address the questions around sampling.
Yeah, thanks for the question about sampling. Actually, that is what we sometimes what we will face in some developing countries. The census we have might be 10 years old or even older, and how can we making sure that we covered all the places in that developing country? So actually, the method that we covered in the sampling method that we covered in the presentation, the great population sampling can be an option. So for that, you don't really rely on the census. You rely on a shapefile that kind of give you maybe like your different levels of administrative units. It can be just the first two, and as long as you have a map of the country, it can divide your countries into different small grids, and it can be a 500 meters times 500 meter grid, and this can be used to it can be used to serve as a sampling unit as for your sampling. And not only you have the sampling units, but the program actually can generate population counts for the grid, and based on information about maybe the light at night and maybe traffic conditions. I don't know exactly what factors are used into that model, but it will generate population counts, and the population counts can be used as a matter size for your PPI selection if you use that. So that is this sampling can making sure that you covers all the areas in that developing countries. Maybe so it will avoid the situation that the census is outdated. There's some new like cities or regions on your in the universe, but somehow was not included in the outdated census, and that can be avoided by using this method.
Thank you, Andrew and Ian. Sarah, over to you.
Sorry, I did not relate the question to our work, so I may have missed that then. I thought it was really related to the work of Gallup. So, but
yeah, it was about the sampling frame, and when you're working in developing countries in particular, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, and on the issue of collaboration and trust, the challenge you face when working in countries.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there is anything you want to add.
Well, I mean, I can confirm also when I touch upon the letter. I think collaboration, not just in developing countries, but everywhere. What is key, and Andrew already emphasized, transparency is key. That's really the basis on which the collaboration should sit, because even with most straightforward surveys, especially multi-country, there are always problems. There are always things that do not go as planned, not according to the scenario, and you need to be able to discuss this in an open way to find the best solution. So that is absolutely key. I can only emphasize and confirm that. Now, with regard to sampling frames, I'll go back then to the survey that we did for UN Women on measuring VOW under COVID-19. So the approach we took there, but again, also with cross-national comparability in mind, is that we use these RDD mobile frames, mobile numbers, because if calling on fixed lines, women that were responding to the call may not have been alone in the room, and with a fixed device, they cannot go to another room or another place where they are, so to be alone. So that's the reason why we chose mobile numbers. And through ensuring that we had in our gross sample numbers for all the mobile operators that are active, so we worked for that with a central provider who's Sample Solutions, and they are really an expert in generating RDD sampling frames. But through that, we actually, in theory, could cover the entire female population, because we would not exclude regions or not, because all the numbers from mobile operators would sit in the gross samples. So that is actually a project we took there. Of course, it comes with challenges, because there is no geographical enrichment possible. So even if we wanted to ensure samples also representative for all the regions in the 13 countries, we could not pre-target. So that was a challenge. So we really had to monitor and follow up closely during the field work. But all in all, which is just this random dialing on the gross sample, actually it fell out pretty good. We actually had none of the countries where we saw really great deviations, even in countries where some of the regions were difficult to reach regions, in the sense that they were conflict regions. So actually we were quite happy and satisfied with this sampling frame.
Great, thank you, all three of you. I don't see any more hands raised. We only have a couple of minutes left, but I'd just like to give you an opportunity, all three of you, to just give us your last 30-second reflections. In particular, as we move forward and as we're trying collectively, you know, we work for the same goal of providing better data, more timely data, and being inclusive and ensuring that we cover all parts of the population. So what is your sort of hope for the future in terms of collaborating with national statistical offices, with the Intersecretarial Working Group on Household Surveys, with the sort of the public side of the household surveys, you representing the private sector? So just your 30-second thoughts. Andrew, again, you get the first bite.
So for me, one of the big additions that the private sector can bring to the table is innovation. So whether that's methodological innovation, whether it's innovation around metrics, or innovation around just scaling. And so ultimately, I don't see anything changing in that. I think, if anything, that's a huge opportunity for both national statistics offices and also the broader UN system, a huge opportunity for them to lean into that even more. And so, as both Sarah and myself and Ying have attested, by the fact that we have these collaborations, we're really able to rise the tide for all boats in terms of creating greater levels of literacy around different metrics, mainstreaming different measurement frameworks, and also harmonizing and increasing adoption of methodological best practices. So hopefully that can just continue, but at a slightly faster clip with greater levels of trust. And ultimately, we're much like you. We were trained in the same schools, we were trained, we had the same backgrounds, we were all coming from a similar area. And so I think it's just important to remember that ultimately, although we might have that private sector to label, we're all looking to do great work.
Thank you, Andrew. Ian.
Oh, I guess it's my turn. So actually, I think there are some areas that we can collaborate with the national statistics offices, and it includes like testing instrument, building customized trainings, and scaling rollout of the data collections. And these are the areas. And I actually, personally, I think it will be great to work the national statistics offices, because sometimes, you know, we as Gallup, we are trying to find the data that we can use for building frame or using as a target or some additional analysis of the data. But sometimes it's kind of hard to find those information because those data has not been released yet. So if the National Statistics Office can share with us some insights, some information that they have, they can help us to improve that area. And in return, definitely we can collaborate on, we can provide service and share our experience in fieldwork collection, anything with them in return. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Your last words.
Okay, not much new to add to this, but yes, being part of a public affairs team in Ipsos, and I feel that is the same when we work with UN organizations and other of our clients. Actually, we do the research on both sides for a better world. So that's all. That essentially makes the collaboration always also fruitful and valuable. So yeah, being a global company, we hope, and it's also our ambition, and that's really important for us, that we can contribute with the capacities that we have, because we are this global, we have this global coverage, we have these capacities, we have this. We can scale, so that is what we like to contribute to research and studies, either locally or for organizations like UN. So wherever that we can contribute with these capacities and this expertise, there we feel ourselves at our best. So
great.
And also with more and more, and that's also what we like to do better, but together with governments, but also with international organizations, to look into not just new data to collect, but also like what do we already have, and how can we make the best use of that? Because there is a lot of data, a wealth of data, but the difficulty is to get meaningful insights from these. So that's also an area where we like to contribute as much as possible.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, a big round of virtual applause to our three speakers. I think this has been great, inspiring, and terribly useful for all of us. And let me now pass the floor to our colleagues at the ECLAC Statistics Division. Andres Gutierrez, over to you, Andres.
Thank you, Francesca. And on behalf of the director of the ECLAC Statistics Division, I would like to acknowledge to the presenters for such outstanding talks. I hope that this event met the audience expectations. And just remember that this Friday, we will have another webinar, joint webinar, that will deal with assessment of quality of complex survey estimates in household surveys. I think that we have run out of time, so thank you everyone for attending this webinar. Thank you, Francesca, for moderating. Thank you to our presenters, and thank you, Javi and Charlotte, for coordinating this excellent event. So it is an honor for me to close this webinar. See you next Friday. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye.